What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special, and by now you may have heard that last night there was an attack in the Ukraine at one of the largest nuclear power plants in Europe. And I just want to help you guys to kind of separate some of the ridiculous FUD from what some of the real risks actually are in this situation. All right, first of all, anything violent happening near a nuclear power plant is serious, okay? It's a very serious deal. People shooting anywhere near a place like that, obviously not a good situation, all right? Now, that being said, when the press hears the word nuclear, you need to understand the mainstream press, especially here in the United States, they get a little twinkle in their eye and they get so excited. Nuclear, you know why? Because fear sells. Fear sells even better than sex, okay? And nothing scares people more than the word nuclear. First things first, let's look at some of the video. Here's the video that was circulating on Twitter last night. What you're looking at is not an artillery barrage. That's not a reactor being bombed. This is a flare, okay? You're looking at a flare landing in a parking lot, right? Somebody sent a flare up in the sky so they could see what they were shooting at. They're not bombing the reactor, okay? And the fact that they're sending up flares so they can see what they're shooting at tells you they're actually being careful and they're not indiscriminately lobbing bombs and shells at a nuclear plant. Now, in this video, what you can see here is tracer fire. This is machine guns being shot at people. Again, not being shot at the reactor. Now, I'm not entirely sure where this is taking place, but I'm pretty sure I can tell where this is based on Google Maps. What you're looking at here is a satellite image of the plant. You see where the arrow is pointing at that red dot, how there's 6 of these red circles? Those are your reactor buildings. That's where the nuclear material is. That's where the reactor, the core, the fuel rods, and the control rods are housed. That is the most vital area of the plant. Right next to each reactor building, where the green arrow is pointing, that's your turbine building. That's where the steam is sent to actually turn a turbine and generate electricity. All right, so you'll see there's 6 reactor buildings and there's 6 turbine buildings. Now that yellow area down at the bottom, that is what I believe we saw in video last night. That's your administrative building. That's where all your training instructors, your engineers, your nerds like me, that's where they would work. From what I saw in the video last night, with the location of the parking lot and the building next to it and the shape of that building, it looks like that's where that fighting was breaking out. It was not at the reactor building. The shooting you're seeing there, they're not shooting at the reactors. I cannot emphasize that enough. It's possible that stray rounds hit the buildings. It's possible that there was secondary damage to other buildings. You can see in this picture, there's a lot of other buildings around the plant, right? These house boilers, heating and cooling, fans, there's warehouses, there's all kinds of secondary buildings at a nuclear plant, but these buildings don't house the reactors themselves. Now, I am not a Putin apologist. I'm not a guy who's sitting here trying to toe the party line for Russia. At the same time, I'm not one of those black and white people who's going to say Russia bad, everyone else good. I just want to give you some background so you can better understand what's going on there. First, let's look at this statement that came out from this Ukrainian government official, talking about how this could be 10 times worse than Chernobyl. Okay, this statement is pure, unadulterated garbage. Okay. Yes, there are risks to the plant with this going on. Violence near a nuclear plant is a serious business. But to say 10 times Chernobyl, that is flat out, straight up BS, folks. The reactors at this plant are VVER type reactors. They're very similar to the pressurized water reactors that are used here in the United States. What happened at Chernobyl cannot happen at this reactor. It is physically impossible for what happened at Chernobyl to happen at a VVER reactor. I'll spare you the details of high-level reactor physics, but a VVER reactor is water-cooled and water-moderated. All right? The RBMK reactor at Chernobyl was graphite-moderated, water-cooled. Now, you may not know what that difference is, but it's void coefficients. The VVER has a negative void coefficient. The RBMK at Chernobyl had a positive void coefficient. Jack, you're losing me. What are you talking about? All right, at the RBMK reactor at Chernobyl, the hotter the reactor got, the higher the power went. And that's why there was this feedback loop and what's called a prompt criticality. And the reactor blew its lid and ejected all of the core contents out into the atmosphere. And the RBMK reactor had no containment dome that would contain that explosion and keep the fuel from landing all over the place. Now, the VVER reactor, besides having the negative void coefficient, which means it is physically impossible for that explosion to happen to begin with, because as the VVER reactor gets hotter, power goes down. But also the VVR reactor has a hardened containment dome around it. So it is nothing like the Chernobyl reactors, nothing like the RBMK reactors. So any comparisons to Chernobyl here, folks, understand, if you see somebody in the media mention Chernobyl, switch off. This guy's trying to scare you. And remember, fear sells. Also remember, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of anti-nuclear activists out there who make a living selling fear to scare people away from nuclear power. And those people right now are licking their chops, chomping at the bit. They cannot wait to get in front of a camera and scare you. Understand that's coming, and these people are full of it. They will use the most hyperbolic, ridiculous rhetoric to scare you. If we get too afraid of nuclear power and we decide to move away from nuclear, guess what we're going to use more of? Natural gas. Remember that. A lot of the reasons why we're in this mess is because the world is so dependent on natural gas. Now, one of the properties of nuclear power that makes it special and unique is that nuclear fuel continues to generate heat even after the reactor is shut down. Now, what that means, think about your car, right? When you park your car and you turn the engine off, you'll touch the hood. It's still warm, right? But the car is not generating any more heat. The car is cooling itself. It's not burning any more fuel. There's no more heat being produced in the engine. A nuclear plant doesn't work like that, because even after the fission process stops, even after the reactor stops making power, there's still radioactive decay happening in the core, so those fuel rods are still generating large amounts of heat. So you need to maintain active cooling even after the plant is shut down. Now, this is where you get into actually there could be some real risk at this plant, because that plant needs to maintain that cooling. So to do that, you need qualified operators, you need maintenance people, you need plant employees. Now, I know a lot of nuclear operators and maintenance folks. They tend to live in the towns surrounding the plants. And something tells me those guys at that plant stayed behind to keep that reactor safe, even though the fighting was going on all around them, even though everybody else in the army was in retreat and the Russians came in and took over. I'm willing to bet those guys are still there running that plant and keeping that cooling active. Why? Because that's their home. They're not going to let something like that happen. So long story short, no, there will not be another Chernobyl at this plant, okay? It literally cannot happen. The laws of physics prevent it. Now, it looks like the fighting is over. The fighting didn't get too close to the reactors. That building that was supposedly on fire was the administrative building. That fire is out. There is no radiation leakage. So it looks like the risk at this plant has now passed. I'm not going to try to paint a rosy picture and say all is well, nothing is wrong. But at the same time, you need to understand that what's going on in the press right now is a joke, okay? It's clickbait, FUD, nonsense, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And remember, the more they keep you afraid, the more frightened you are, the more you stay tuned, the more money they make. So try not to buy into the hysteria. Guys, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel. I want to thank you for your time and for watching. Until next time, live small and dream big.